What's going on, everybody? Dash Michaels here, and welcome to a very spectacular episode of Shorts and Hoodies. It's the SNH podcast, episode 7, the horror episode. What's going on, everybody? Dash Michaels here, and welcome to another episode of Shorts and Hoodies. This is the SNH podcast. Tonight, I have 3 guests where we usually have just 2. Now we have 3. Tonight, this is the horror episode. This is Creep Shows and Critters. My guests tonight, Chase, Zach, and Matt. How are we doing tonight, guys?
Hey, pretty good, man.
Awesome. So tonight we are talking everything horror. Okay, we've done different episodes so far. We've talked about different genres. We've delved into TV, but tonight, one of the first genres that I ever fell in love with was horror. And at a very, very young age, I had an awesome grandmother who really just was just like, "Fuck it, here's some Stephen King," and that's kind of what I grew up on, was Stephen King and Alfred Hitchcock. Chase, tell us a little bit about yourself. We learned about you a little bit 2 weeks ago, didn't we?
That's right. Yeah, I'm trying to get that 5-timer card we talked about.
There we go.
I got my shorts on. I got my hoodies on.
There you go. I never wear a hoodie.
I noticed that. I feel like I'm the only one coming prepared for this. But I'm Chase Todd. I'm one half of the Chase and Shep show. And we do a lot of horror stuff. We originated out of reviewing Christmas-themed horror movies. We did our first short film, was a horror comedy, and all day today I've been at work with our new series that's coming up. It's our first scripted series, which is also a horror comedy. So horror is just an inescapable genre. It feels like.
Awesome. Zach, Matt, tell us about yourselves, guys.
Well, we are fairly new podcasters. We started the show Watch No Evil. That was end of last summer. And it was like, it started out as our quarantine project. It was something we had talked about doing for years. And Matt had been kind of dogging me about it. And I'm not great at commitment. So I was like, I got nothing else going on, so let's do this. And we finally recorded an episode, and I got hooked. And Matt knows much more about horror than I do, which is why I was apprehensive about it to begin with.
Gotcha.
Growing up, my family was not really into horror movies at all. My parents' idea of horror is like CSI. So... which is a kind of horror, I guess.
Yeah.
But, mostly I got into horror when I started dating my now wife, and we would just like put on a shitty horror movie just like as a cheap date, and we would just kind of tear it apart.
Okay.
And so we kind of gravitate towards like the more paranormal kind of stuff, and that's really how I got into horror about like 10 years ago. So I'm a youngster in the world of horror.
And I've been doing this forever. I've always been watching horror movies because I love them. I think that it's my favorite genre. And it's funny, whereas Zach is fairly new to horror, like the first movies that I remember watching as a kid were horror movies that I shouldn't have been watching. And that's partially because my dad was a big fan of horror movies, but specifically like the original Universal's Monsters horror movies. So... Yeah. Obviously, growing up on Bela Lugosi's Dracula and Frankenstein and, The Mummy, but also the B movies from that era. So Thing from Another World and movies that are terrible, like The Claw, which was, I think, a 1952 B movie. And it was like a is a kaiju movie, so a giant flying chicken monster. And so I watched a lot of those, but I also had a sister that was 8 years older than me. So I remember at 7 watching Halloween H2O with her and one of her friends from high school, and just being absolutely traumatized. And I've never.
That's a really bad movie. So I mean, yeah, no.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I've always just loved watching horror, and I'm now mostly a musician. So I work and teach in music. And so it still inspires a lot of the music that I write. I compose mostly like for concert music, but also for like dance and other stuff. So it has impacted art along the way.
Gotcha.
It's actually how we met. We went to college together. We're both music students, and I'm also a musician. I guess I should have said that.
Okay.
So yeah, we're both kind of still in that world.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So first, before we even talk about anything, before we get anything, let's kind of define what is horror, because there are very, I think. So originally, when I was sitting here, I was going to go into this. It was
going for the big questions right off the bat.
Yeah, well, I think we need to before
this
we
is
can.
What is the meaning of life?
Exactly. To me, growing up, and I've always used this kind of corny cliche. There's a naked chick. She just got out of the shower. There's a person, usually really big or extremely small. You're running away. They're walking after you, and somehow they catch you and kill you. That is horror to me. But there are the other entities, as in the paranormal. Okay. You have the movies like Paranormal Activity. You have like, the Conjuring, the Possession movies and stuff like that, to where it used to be, for the most part, there's a person or a thing, you don't want to get near it because they're going to kill you. You try to leave. But now there's that gray area. And part of the thing that we're going to do in the draft is, so I'm sitting here talking to my brother, and I'm like, well, I'm trying to rank all my top killers, because that's what we're doing. We're doing a draft of top killers. And I'm like, well, you could do this person. He goes, well, what about this? And I go, well, because we got into the subject of Chucky. Chucky technically isn't a person. It's a doll whose spirit did come from a person. So I would technically consider, yes, Chucky is a killer.
Yeah, Charles Lee Ray.
Exactly. But then you have the other ones like Jigsaw, who's never killed anybody. So
which I have to say, after marathoning those movies last week, that doesn't fly with me. After like the third movie, I'm like, that's a bullshit excuse, John Kramer. Like,
well, it's the thing though, because he made traps that were entirely solvable, but Amanda, who took over in the second one, didn't. So is she a killer while Jigsaw's not?
Oh yeah,
I'm spoiling this for you.
Have you never seen Saw?
I've seen the first two.
Well, you've seen the good ones. I mean, the really good ones.
The best ones.
Yeah. Stop after 2.
Not that the other ones are bad. It's one of my absolute favorite horror franchises. But it's more about the whole mental, the mental tricks that are played of why I like it. Very different than, say, Freddy, Jason, Ghostface. I'm coming to kill you. You run, I walk, I catch you. Simple physics and stuff like that. All stuff that makes sense in horror movies.
I've always said that Saw is a very overrated horror franchise, but a very underrated crime franchise. This isn't a new thing. Like, this is Saw, like, at its core. Like, this is always what it's been.
Yeah,
for the most part.
So my first question that I bring to all three of you, I about said both of you. When is the first time you fell in love with horror?
When he was Zach, when you said that, CSI was kind of the extent of horror in your household, when I was little, like, I was just petrified. Like, horror was not my bag, and CSI like traumatized me. Like, I would see scenes in CSI. I'm like, I can't, Mom and Dad, I'm out. but like I remember them watching, like, I think it was Scary Movie 2, and they were trying to explain to me that, like, oh, it's a funny movie, and I'm like, what the hell is funny about it? Like, this is terrifying. And so I just was not with it. Goosebumps traumatized me. But we were also talking last week, like, where All That was kind of my Saturday Night Live back then. That's what
Right.
Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark, like, were to me, you know, as a kid. They were kind of my you know, an introduction to those worlds. And later on it would become like Tales from the Crypt and Tales from the Dark Side and all those anthology shows. But the turning point for me was I moved back to Illinois in 2007, and I met my now best friend of like 14 years or something like that. And he's like, "Have you seen Rob Zombie's Halloween?" I'm like, "Hell no, absolutely not." And so I just dove headfirst into horror. I went straight into Rob Zombie's Halloween, and right out of that into Saw, like, and I never looked back.
Awesome.
So it was definitely Rob Zombie's Halloween that did it for me.
Awesome.
Yeah,
What
I
about
can't
y'all?
remember ever not loving horror, and that stems from the fact that I've been watching it since I was born. And my parents were never shy, my dad especially, about putting on a horror movie that was relatively above the age range that I should be watching. Like, I remember watching a lot of horror movies right when they came out that I should not have been able to see. And that was fine with me then. I never really went through the like fear period that I think a lot of kids go through, but I
Right.
still liked a lot of the kids' horror as well. So same thing, Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Eerie, Indiana. And there's something that's really interesting about those specifically because there's a sort of wonderful surrealism to those that you don't necessarily get to see in like the conventional slasher horror. And so my love of surrealist horror, which is sort of my favorite genre, sort of stemmed out of those, that like children's horror that, like, you know,
Warped stuff.
yeah, warped a lot of horror conventions, but we're still scary.
Awesome.
And it was
Like, what about you?
it's a lot like what Chase went through. Like, even though my parents like love CSI and everything, I was petrified of it. I was, and up until, I mean, I guess I'm still somewhat of a squeamish person, and it's like kind of strange, like, how does a squeamish person end up with a horror movie podcast? But I'm getting better about it. It's just like certain things really get me, and I'm still not a huge fan of gore. So I lean more towards the paranormal, and actually the first horror movie that I really fell in love with was Insidious. Right when it came out, like I said, my wife and I love just watching those together, cheap date night, and we watched that together in theaters. And we came out, and I could not stop thinking about it, and because that one, I feel like, yeah, it's not the best horror movie, but there's a lot of complexity to it, and
Yeah.
I like to really like pick pieces of media apart and kind of like find the inner meaning of it, and like some themes and allegories and, you know, throughs that just make it make more sense on more levels.
Right.
And I think that was the first one. I was like, oh, horror isn't just a guy with a knife chasing a naked woman.
Right.
And just, I would say, you know, pinning horror into the slasher box is a crime. Because, you know, Chase mentions crime, like Saw being a better crime franchise. I think crime is a form of horror.
Oh, yeah.
We're all kind of a little afraid of someone, like home invasions, right?
Yeah.
That's horrific to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mother watches the ID Network like all the time, and when I
I
told
like
her I
that
was
stuff.
watching the Saw movies, she's like, "Oh, I don't know how you watch that stuff." I'm like, "It's the same shit you watch, but with more bite." And she's like, "I don't want bite to my crime shows. Like, I don't need it." And I'm like, "Okay, I understand." But I've also noticed that, like, I've gotten more squeamish over time. Like, I've somehow become more sensitive to it over time. As I get older, I'm just like, I can't. I love watching it, but I'm like, oh, I can't.
I think for me, so I can kind of pinpoint it to probably 2, 3, or 4 things. For me, I grew up with a very religious family on one side. So after my parents' divorce, my dad and my stepmom, very, very religious. We couldn't even watch The Simpsons. So that was too much. It really was. And then I had my other side, which was my mom, my grandmother, that side. My grandmother being a humongous like Stephen King, Hitchcock fan. So I can remember being, I don't know, 4, maybe 5, and seeing Cujo. I remember seeing The Birds really, really young. Cujo more than anything for me, which was just terrifying, but it was really good. Like there was something about it that drew me in. Another moment would probably be, so when I was in the 6th grade, my dance teacher at school, she was neighbors with one of the guys who created or helped like make Pumpkinhead, and he brought Pumpkinhead to our school. Like this was soon after the first film was done and everything, and it was like, it was so cool. But he broke down like how things were made, and in a way ruined horror movies for me. More so horror, more so like gore. So I love gore movies because I'm sitting here just going, not disgusted or terrified. I'm sitting here going, how did they do that? Like, oh, they did that with this. I know that because that guy told me, but like kind of ruined it for me. So I'm kind of with you, Chase, to where like I think I'm more so now because technology is so good with movie making. It's hard to tell what's real and what's not. So many things look so real to where I'm like, oh, I'm a little nauseous right now.
Those last few Saw movies, I was like, they're not even trying anymore. The blood is neon pink. I'm like, come on.
Yeah. It probably goes back to those two movies, Cujo and meeting like actual Pumpkinhead. Like, and it was just the coolest thing for me. But like I said, it kind of ruined it for me. But I can appreciate it. And I think that's what kind of got me into wanting to know more about movies and watching as much movies I can, and then diving into the whole like behind the scenes, how things are made. It just fascinated me so much. And that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about with horror stuff is, what brought you to it? When did you first fall in love with it? I just think it's a really cool thing. And then, both of you, Matt and Chase, brought up two shows, and that's what's going to lead me into our next part here is our favorite movies and our favorite franchises, but also TV shows. And that third thing that got me was Tales from the Dark Side. Tales from the Dark Side was fucking nuts when I was a kid. Like, they're showing this on TV, like it's so scary. But this was before I got to see, how things were made and stuff. And the other one was Erie, Indiana. And I can remember like the intro more than anything for Tales from the Dark Side, that music fucked with me for years.
That's why I think I took to that one like the fastest, like in my adult years, as far as those old anthology shows go, that was the one I just took to the fastest. And I think it's because it felt the most like adult Goosebumps. Yeah. In that way, especially with the opening titles and everything.
That
and
voice.
There's that familiarity there. Yeah.
So brings me to my question. What are your favorite movie franchises and what sets them apart from, say, other horror franchises that, I mean, you watch, you tolerate, but they're not up there for you. They're not high up on your list. So we're talking the horror movies and the horror TV shows. And then, of course, what kind of makes a horror TV show? Because you can only get away with so much, if you're on cable versus, say, a Netflix or a Hulu streaming versus an HBO streaming. There are very different things that you can do in one that you can't really kind of do in the other. So, Chase, what are you watching? What is your favorite franchises and TV shows here for horror?
All right. Man, I've thought about this all week. I've been working on my list all week for this. I think it's funny. We've all kind of mentioned the deconstruction of horror and kind of having it spoiled for us and stuff like that. And to me, like, you know, being a filmmaker and stuff, I have learned the most about film and filmmaking and storytelling from horror. I mean, from learning about horror, it's just I don't know, the most fun genre to play in. And because I was looking through my franchises, and I only went with the ones that, like, if there's a new movie coming out, I'm gonna go see it. I don't care how much somebody shits on the franchise as a whole. I don't care. If there's a new one, I'm at the theater to see it. Evil Dead, for sure. Anything Evil Dead, I am ready for. It's one of the best. It's inspired some of my favorite movies. I just rewatched Cabin in the Woods today, which is one of my all-time favorite horror movies ever, ever. Uh, Paranormal Activity is a franchise I love. I'll marathon the shit out of that.
Dude, that first movie came out, like, that thing, that fucked with me for like a week. I was like, this shit is real, yo. Y'all know this is real, right?
Well,
And I was
talking
like,
about
oh, it was a movie. It's not real. I'm done.
talking about
Okay.
Insidious,
Yeah.
both Insidious and Paranormal Activity, like, I don't know, that was another thing. Like, I've never been the kind to, like, burn, like, illegal copies of movies and stuff like that. Like, I don't care if other people do and stuff, but, like, it's my industry. I like to support. And but there's something about horror movies and like bootleg copies, especially like those indie horror movies like Insidious and Paranormal Activity, where, like, they're not playing in the theaters around here, or, like, nobody's going to take me to go see it.
Right.
I was a kid, and seeing, like, especially Paranormal Activity on a bootleg disc, I mean, that's as scary as that shit gets. I mean, somebody's like, I found this.
It legit
and,
looked like CCTV.
and it had the alternate ending. So everybody else who saw it in
Mhm.
theaters was talking to me about the dumb ending where she, like, jumps at the camera. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? This ending was lit. Like, are you like, it was so good. But I understand that ending, you don't get sequels with that ending.
Yeah.
But of course, Halloween is the classic franchise. I mean, I love Rob Zombie, got me into it. John Carpenter, I just, you know, I hold in such a high regard. His original Halloween and his remake of Village of the Damned are two of my favorite horror movies. Saw is a franchise I'll watch. You know, I've marathoned it a few times every few years. It's just it's a good one. Final Destination is a favorite of mine as well. I don't care. It's something about just getting more and more ridiculous. It feels like the Final Destination is the Fast and Furious of horror.
You watch your
Yeah.
mouth. You watch your mouth.
That's
my Saw. Like, I will go see any Fast and the Furious.
Alien, of course, is spotty. I really, more than anything, more than the franchise, I guess, is the first Alien. I really like atmospheric horror, and the original Alien is just a perfect example of that. And these other two franchises aren't necessarily franchises in the sense of films, but companies. A24, whatever horror film they're making, I'm going to see it. I think they're really rewriting what horror can be right now. Really proving to the masses that there's more storytelling to be done with horror.
Yeah.
And Stephen King, anything Stephen King. I collect his books. I think I have just about every single one, other than like maybe like 4 or 5 at this point. So I'll watch anything Stephen King. And finally, Hatchet. Hatchet was my last franchise that I'll watch any of those.
I don't know Hatchet.
Hatchet is Victor Crowley. They're ridiculous. Victor Crowley is the killer in Hatchet.
Well,
there
spoiler.
there are 4 movies, I think. Hatchet 1 through 3, and then Victor Crowley is the 4th one.
Okay.
The quality, just, you know, as these things do, just kind of tanks
compared to Wrong Turn a lot.
It does. I can see that. I could see that.
Matt, what about you?
I have to concur with the Alien franchise, but mine extends for the entire franchise, even though I think that Covenant was not a good movie. And I will readily admit that. But the original 4, so Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, and then Alien Resurrection, I will go to bat for always, because I think that they were so diverse in what they wanted to do with horror. So starting in that first one with the atmospheric horror, moving into Alien 2, which was more action and impactful. And you had Bill Paxton, who is just he's just awful and wonderful in that movie at the same
Yeah.
time.
How do you feel about this? I thought after seeing Alien Covenant that it was the best Alien sequel I'd ever seen, and then but mashed with another dumb Prometheus movie.
Yeah.
Like all of the
Oh my
Alien elements were the best Alien movie I'd ever seen, but they were put inside of another stupid Prometheus movie.
Yeah, the Prometheus movies, I don't
That's actually the first Alien movie that I saw was Prometheus.
Wow.
So I guess I've seen them in the correct order so far, like canonically. So I saw
Yeah.
Prometheus first, and then I've recently rewatched Alien, and that I've been saving my first viewing of Alien for our podcast. So I guess I've missed out on the iconic nature of it for a long time, but I guess for a worthy sacrifice.
Yeah, I will always get a pat for that. I really love The Thing. The not the original, but the John Carpenter 1970s. The Thing was one of my favorite movies just because I had never really experienced body horror in the movies that I had watched. It was more slasher focused. And my dad really loved The Thing from Another World, which was 1953, I believe. Maybe. It was around that time, which just like it's another Frankenstein monster
Right.
style of horror movie. And so loved that one. Ended up watching the most recent Thing movie, which is actually a prequel to the John Carpenter, and then the John Carpenter one. And so I think that franchise is so cool, especially because the 1970s one is done in practical effects, and those practical effects are incredible. It's so awesome to watch, and I will always go back to that movie and watch it again, and especially because Ennio Morricone did the score for it, and I think it really revolutionized like how we treat horror scores, and one of my favorite things about horror movies, because I'm a composer, I'm a musician, is scoring movies, and one of my long-term goals is to score like horror movies over time. And so it's always at the like forefront of the cutting edge of horror cinema. A lot of people credit like Hans Zimmer for like the drone score that got really popularized, but horror composers have been doing that in both mainstream and B horror movies for decades before Hans Zimmer ever got to it. He used it differently, but in my opinion, less effectively. But like Ennio Morricone's score for The Thing is masterful. Jerry Goldsmith's scores, Bernard Herrmann's scores for Psycho and for Rear Window, incredible, because Birds doesn't have a score. So the Alfred Hitchcock sort of universe of movies is another one that I dearly love. And then for my like schlock slasher horror franchise, I love the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and I know it's so bad, but it's just so fun.
No, it's not. It's so good.
There's
really is.
such a camp to it. Like
It
once
is,
you
and
get to the
that's what
Dream Child,
Oh yeah.
I'm just
But
like,
I think that's what it
this
is about
terrible.
Nightmare on Elm Street. The campiness of it is what like I come to expect it. So when they did the remake or they attempted it, it was just like you're missing the one quality that makes this franchise what it is, and that makes it so good is the comedic effect to it. That this is all just silly, like gore and
England, like the way that he would improvise like funnier lines in the later ones, like in the Dream Warriors when he pulls the girl into the TV and he's like, "Welcome to prime time, bitch." It's like hilarious.
Yeah.
And you didn't really have a lot of that in the first of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. He sort of got snappier as it went along, but then the new one was like, well, now it's a gritty reboot, and it's it tried to do what Rob Zombie did for Halloween, but for Halloween you had a character that was already built on not talking. And we had come to know Freddy Krueger as being like the wisecracking horror villain that then was sort of like taken away and given a spooky edge. And it's like, he already can infiltrate your dreams. Let him have the lines.
I think comedy plays a really big part into horror, personally.
Absolutely.
Because you said earlier that your favorite kind of subset would be surreal horror. And for me, it'd have to be horror comedy. It's like the complete, like, I'll go from like horror comedy to like things like Rosemary's Baby, The Shining, Poltergeist, like, just two totally different sides of this. But there are certain things like American Horror Story. When I first saw it, it just lacked that humor that I was like, this is a bit much. Like, this is a lot to handle. You kind of need that humor. And I think you can utilize humor to capitalize on scares as well, because you're kind of lulling people into this sense of security with your jokes that you're like, we're all just here having a good time, that you're not going to see whatever's coming next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zach, what about you? What were your favorite franchises and TV shows for the horror genre here?
So
Still kind of being a newbie.
yeah, I mean, so I don't have that like kind of nostalgia for the camp and the gore and all that stuff of like, the 70s and 80s. So like Nightmare on Elm Street, like I've seen the original Nightmare on Elm Street, not seen any of the sequels. It just doesn't do it for me. Like,
Really?
I understand why people are into it, but it just doesn't do it for me. And we did Evil Dead for our podcast pretty early on, and that was the first movie. Well, there's a second movie that we did for the podcast for Watch No Evil that I just didn't like it. It's like I cannot ignore continuity issues. That just absolutely takes me out of the moment, and that's really what like taking me out of the moment, like that's gonna make me hate a movie. And it's not that I hate Evil Dead, but it just I don't like it. That's for sure.
No, he hates Evil Dead.
Seems like he hates Evil Dead.
It's down there for sure. But it is conversely, I love the more cerebral kind of stuff. So like Psycho, like Alfred Hitchcock stuff, I think everything he does is great. What Jordan Peele is doing, I love. But as far as franchises go, The Conjuring, that one's kind of like there's some depth to it, but also there is sometimes where it's like Annabelle is not like super deep at times. So it's kind of cool to me how they're building this whole universe, and how it's not just here's one movie and one plot line, and then here's another and its plot line. It's kind of interwoven,
right?
And I kind of like it reminds me of almost the Marvel Cinematic Universe in ways where it's like, oh, like you'll see Annabelle in a Conjuring movie, and you'll see some of the Conjuring spirits in the Annabelle movie, and then you got the Nun and La Llorona. So that's really captivating to me. So that's probably like if I had to choose one, Conjuring universe or whatever they're calling it these days.
Right.
Insidious, already mentioned. I think they got a great thing going on here. And what's nice about Insidious for me is that it's not always the same story. I think they've done variety in just the right places, whereas some people kind of hate that about the Insidious franchise. Like after 2, they kind of going in different direction. I like that. I like seeing some kind of growth, whether it's productive or not. Paranormal Activity, for me, I kind of view that as a guilty pleasure, because it's like, it's not deep. And for me, that seems like really out of character to a lot of people, because I'm a thinker. So yeah, it's just, and some of them are not great. Like speaking of continuity issues, like later on the Ghost Dimension things.
Yeah.
No, Ghost Dimension was great.
Ghost Dimension was great.
It brought it back.
But it doesn't really make sense if you go on back and watch the earlier
Continuity
movies.
wise, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
But
Yeah.
it's time.
It's like some weird kind of time loop going on. Okay, well, if that's how you want to look at it, you can pretty much explain everything with like metaphysics, right?
See, we work as a podcast because we have very different tastes in movies, because I was so excited to show him Evil Dead because I was like, I love this movie. I think that this movie's great. And then we finished it. I was like, ah. And he's like,
Shit all over.
terrible.
That's the worst feeling. You're like, dude, you really got to watch this movie. And like the whole time, it's that episode. I don't know if you've ever seen it, when Ted is trying to show Stella Star Wars and like on How I Met Your Mother, and the whole time he's like, and like nothing happens. He's like, and then you have Jason Segel in the bedroom. He goes, she should have like jumped right then. It's stuff like that to where like I really want you to watch this movie. Like it's very important to me and who I am. Like this movie is why I became the person I am now. And you're just like, it was all right. And you're like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
I respect that.
Have
But
you
at the
seen the
same
remake?
time, not for me.
And I think that the argument makes good content.
I haven't seen the remake. I was actually told
Oh.
to stay away from the remake because of my squeamishness.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a fair reason to stay away from it. But
Yeah, I've heard it's way worse.
the remake is one of my all-time favorites as well. Like if I had to choose a favorite from the franchise, it's actually the remake. Because to me, because the whole thing with the original Evil Dead was that was terrifying at the time. Like what they were going for was this gore fest, terrifying. Like they weren't trying to be funny. That just kind of came over time. But the Evil Dead remake, I think, is such an excellent remake because one, they also just use practical effects, and I think it's such a great example of how you can use practical effects in a modern day movie. But it's also, it feels like the modern day version of what they tried to do back in the 80s when they did the original. Like it is terrifying, it is gruesome, it is brutal, it is everything that the original movie meant to be. It just didn't have the budget, it was a little ahead of its time, if you will.
And the framing device around the main character's like addiction and her rehabilitation actually gave them a reason to be at the cabin and stay at the cabin. And actually, I really like the remake too. And I like it because I think that it fixes a lot of the expectations that we have as viewers when watching it, to be like, oh, why don't they just leave? Why don't they just like exit the cabin? They have a car, get in it, drive out. But the remake fixes a lot of those.
And because I ended up watching like the original 2 and the remake around the same time. And once I ended up seeing all 3 of the original Evil Dead movies and went back and watched the remake uses a lot of Raimi's shots from the original 3 movies. And it's the exact same shots. It's the exact same thing as the original movie, just kind of modernized, and it's amazing what you can do, with the simplicity of Evil Dead.
Oh yeah. All that being said, I did find the original terrifying in my own way. Like the gore behind it. Like, yes, I could tell it was fake, but to me, it's the implications of the gore that are the most terrifying. Because then my mind goes to, okay, what if that happened to an actual person? Because like I know this is a movie, I know this is fake. There is that like kind of screen between me and what's going on in the movie. But then my mind goes immediately to, yeah, but what if that happened to you? What if that happened to someone you know? What if that happened right in front of you to someone you didn't know? And that to me is the most terrifying.
We did that really early, and I wonder if we went back and watched again if you would have a different opinion of the gore, because you ended up liking, they used the same technique with the melting wax in reverse to reanimate the bad guy in Hellraiser.
Yeah.
They used that same technique in Evil Dead, and you liked it.
I loved it in that movie.
No
So but I think that was done in a more artful kind of way, at least from my perspective. I don't know.
They had money.
They've been it.
Yeah.
You can buy me with money. Just put good effects, spend the money. You'll have my my love. But going back to the franchises, Cloverfield.
Absolutely.
This is another one where it started in one place, very different from where it has ended up.
Yeah.
And I love where it's going. I liked was it 51 Cloverfield Lane?
Something like that, yeah.
Whatever that is.
10 Cloverfield.
Like I didn't know John Goodman could be scary.
Yeah.
And he's frightening in that movie. It's terrifying. But as far as TV shows, I don't know if we've talked so many TV shows. American Horror Story is something that has come up. It's so hit or miss for me, depending on the season.
Yeah.
Because it's like the first season, it's haunted house. That's right down my alley. So I watched that. I enjoyed that. There is some like complexity to it, so I guess it kept me busy mentally. Second season, which seems to be the fan favorite. I know
I love the second
Matt's
season.
favorite.
Not me.
Didn't hold me. I got 3
Really?
episodes in. Stop.
Asylum was just amazing to me.
Nah.
Asylum and Coven were both just
Kevin,
2 back-to-back, like
definitely.
3 seasons in a row. I'm just like, these guys can't miss.
See,
I love Coven.
I didn't care
Yeah.
that much for Coven. I thought it was less horror.
I think it was the New Orleans aspect of it that was just so interesting. And Kathy Bates, I thought was just.
I did love
awesome.
Kathy Bates in Coven. I didn't care about
Kathy
the
Bates
teenagers.
was what brought me back to American Horror Story, because
Really?
like I said, I watched the first season and it was just too much for me, like when it first came on, and because I still hadn't like jumped fully on the horror train yet. And especially with that lack of humor, I wasn't vibing with it. But when I saw Kathy Bates was going to be on American Horror Story and Angela Bassett, I was like, okay, all right.
Asylum, and then the circus season.
Oh, Freak Show.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it so much. But
Freak Show was good.
I think I have like I
Gotta be
gravitate
hotel,
towards anything with an asylum in it or a crazy house or whatever. I just gravitate. I need to see it. Same thing with carnivals and circuses. I need to see what's going on here. And I think those for me why I gravitated. But yeah, I do agree. I think the fan favorite is Asylum. Season 2 was just it's so
scary. I don't know what it is. If by all means I should love it, but
there's a lot going on.
You need to watch like the second to last episode of Asylum and then start it all over again.
Okay. Maybe I will. We watched, my wife and I watched American Horror Story together, bits and pieces of it. Like we would watch the first couple episodes of the season and be like, yay or nay. So we watched the Roanoke season, which I think is like 6. Super gory.
Yeah.
We watched the whole thing. The only reason I made it through is Kathy Bates. So
Kathy Bates holding it down at American Horror Story.
She's great.
Yeah.
I'm not really a TV show person with horror. I don't know. Would you consider Twilight Zone horror?
I would.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Elements.
Because I really like that as like a horror genre, and he actually pushed it a lot further when he did Night Gallery.
Well, I think like, with Twilight Zone, it's kind of a mixture between, say, Tales of the Dark Side meets Hitchcock.
Yeah,
kind of like there's something. Is it scary? There's some parts of it, but there's something that's poetic about Hitchcock to me, that Twilight Zone found, and was like, this is a good angle to go with, and I think that.
We probably wouldn't have had Tales from the Dark Side or Goosebumps or any of those anthology shows if it wasn't for Twilight Zone.
Right.
Twilight Zone was definitely like the precursor to a lot of that. And when it comes to horror TV, it's always the anthology shows for me. I'll always give them a go. They're always going to be hit or miss. That's any anthology for you. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I think for me, some of the ones that y'all have said, I mean, of course, the Nightmare on Elm Streets. Saw for me it's going to be the Of the Dead series. Was literally getting ready to watch Army of the Dead because I didn't realize it came out yesterday on Netflix, and I was like, how long is this movie? 2.5 hours. Shit, like podcast literally starts in 2.5 hours. I'm just gonna have to watch this tonight. And I'm so excited because it got really, really good reviews, and then Dave Bautista got like raving reviews on it. As a leading man, and
I'm gonna have to give it another shot, man.
Did you watch it already?
I watched it last night, and I was very disappointed.
Really?
Yeah. I have my reasons.
I'm not gonna listen to you because
I'll wait for you to watch it, and we can talk about it when you've seen.
Yeah, because what was the other one that Zach did? Was it Dawn of the Dead?
Dawn of the Dead, and
I really enjoyed it.
Him and James Gunn.
Yeah.
That's the shopping mall one, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't beat the shopping mall. Which that one
was it? Ving Rhames was in it. Yeah. I thought it was great. I'm a huge Jeepers Creepers fan. Of the movie, maybe not necessarily the director, but the movie itself, especially the first one when it came out, it was different for me. I'm a big slasher fan. So, as we've talked about, that thing is coming after this thing and it's going to kill that. it was a little bit different. I'm a huge Scream fan, but I think I have a hard on for Wes Craven. So anything that he would to do is just amazing. I'm finding myself, I think, becoming more and more of a Purge fan. The new one looks really, really good.
It does.
Yeah. Watching the trailer the other day for it, it was like, oh shit, like fuck the Purge, like this is Purge 24/7. And I was like, oh no, there are rules. There are rules to killing only once a day or one day a year. You have to follow those rules. I think the scariest one for me though has got to be The Descent. And granted, there was only 2 movies. I am so fucking claustrophobic. And it's more like, yeah, it's a horror movie or whatever. That's a claustrophobia movie. That's what that movie was made for. And there are so many scenes that I can't watch because like I need to get out of my skin and bones and just I can feel it just get
That's how I feel with the gore.
Oh, I've
They made
never
that poor girl go down there twice.
Oh yeah, like when the sequel, I was like, okay, there's a sequel. It's gonna be, she's going back again. Girl, do you not remember what happened? And it was like all that fear and more uncomfortableness than anything from the first movie. My body quickly realized you're gonna have to go through that all again ×2. Have fun. TV shows, yeah, it was Tales from the Dark Side, Erie, Indiana, American Horror Story, Stranger Things for me too. And I think Stranger Things kind of pulls in on that Nightmare on Elm Street kind of campiness to it, to where there's that comedy, but it's interesting too because it does have that, say, Goosebumps or Erie, Indiana feel to it as well, the way it's written, the music, and I think just the whole pop cultureness of 80s. It's fun for me growing up in the 80s. It's cool, you know, especially like the year that they all dressed up as Ghostbusters. It was, you know, they're all riding bikes like it's E.T. It was like, oh, remember that, and it was just very fun. And then Supernatural, and so this is where we kind of get into that. It's that kind of gray area of is it horror, is it that paranormal supernatural kind of thing? And that brings me to what we were just having a conversation about. We were talking about Alien. Okay, I love the sequel. I think Aliens is my favorite out of all of them, but this is that gray area where I look at Alien and go, is it horror, is it space sci-fi, is it action? And there's, I think we started to get into, I think once space is involved, other than Jason Goes to Space kind of thing like that.
Or Leprechaun,
yeah.
Which also goes to space.
I think once space is involved, that's when it kind of gets weird. Like it gets iffy when you bring in that other aspect of the whole,
I think you can argue for slasher and Alien.
I think it also just kind of depends. Like if it's something that's kind of blatantly horror in space, you know, unlike the slashers specifically, but something like what was that movie? Pandorum, I think was that one. That was kind of Dead Space-esque.
Right.
You know, Alien. I think the first Alien is most definitely horror, but the second one doesn't really feel like it's action. The second one's definitely action.
I think it does. It has a lot of aspects of slasher because there is that thing that's killing these things, but the space always bothers me. But I'm like slasher killers can't be in space.
Something like
for some reason my mind doesn't like understand that. No, it's on Earth, not in space.
Have you seen Annihilation with Natalie Portman? Because that was going to be an example of like that could technically be a horror, but to me that feels more sci-fi with very frightening moments.
Gotcha.
You know?
What is the scariest movie you've ever seen?
It's The Grudge.
Do I?
It's The Grudge.
Really?
I just can't do it. Something about it messes with me. But I also am like, I'm a skeptic in a lot of ways, but I swear to God, my childhood home growing up is haunted. and and both me and my sister at separate times thought we saw the same ghost like 4 years apart. And we talked about it like maybe 3 years ago for the first time. And I was like, no, I told you that story. She's like, no, you didn't. And our parents were like, oh no, yeah, you both have told us this before. I was like, so I'm in that, like, for some reason, ghost shit, I can't.
So The Grudge is the scariest movie you've ever seen?
Yeah.
So like the Grudge that we just did, or Ju-on?
No, Ju-on the Grudge.
Okay.
Not the
Or
Sam Raimi.
the remake that no one's
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Zach, what about
original one.
you? What's
For
the
me, it's The
scariest
Strangers.
movie? What is it?
The Strangers.
The Strangers, yeah.
It's just so terrifying to me. Like I mentioned earlier, like crime to me is horror. That's the real shit that can happen to you is way scarier than anything else. Like I don't like gore. It makes me uncomfortable, but I don't find it necessarily scary. Squeamishness is not fear. So yeah, Strangers, and the fact that line at the end, and why are you doing this? Because you were home, is just so terrifying.
Yeah.
Just like that followed me.
Chase, what about you? Scariest movie ever for you?
I always think a movie's scariest when it gets under your skin and stays there. Like it just kind of weighs on you after you've seen it a little bit. I think The Shining is a very stressful movie, but I don't know if I would say that's the scariest. I'd have to probably go with something with that A24 has done recently. Probably something like Hereditary, where I left the theater and like I just couldn't shake the feeling that this movie put upon me. It just fills you with such a sense of dread and feeling like these things are real in a sense. I don't know. I feel like that's the new thing with that prestige horror is like it's just this dread filled stuff.
Yeah.
And that definitely like gets under your skin and you're just like, I need a shower.
Yeah.
That's the feeling that I'm like addicted to in horror.
Oh, I can't. Yeah. No.
It's rough. That's that go home and cry yourself to sleep.
Exactly.
That's the I paid for Disney Plus for a reason shit. That's that's the what A24 is making.
For me, it's Serpent and the Rainbow. Wes Craven film. It was between Nightmare and before Scream. It's about voodoo, and it gets into it, and it's some scary shit. Anytime I see a movie has anything to do with voodoo, I'm like, nope, you will not get my money. I can't do it. I can't. The first time I ever went to New Orleans, I think I was 19 or 20. Was there for a dance convention, and walking down Bourbon Street, there's like a little voodoo shop at the very end of Bourbon Street, and I was like, this shit is real. Like, and it's something about it, like, and it's probably because I saw this movie when I was like 6 or 7. Not a movie any 6 or 7-year-old should see. And it's probably one of those movies that is a beautiful movie, a beautiful, scary movie that is very interesting, and I will never know because I don't fucking remember. But you know what I do remember? It's that feeling that I had that I will never fucking forget. It has been almost 40 years since I've seen that movie, and I have never. That feeling is like I just had it, and it has stuck with me.
There is one movie that is consistently scary to me every single time I watch it, and that's Sinister. Every single time I watch Sinister, it gives me the creeps just as much as it did the first time. That's a movie that got under my skin. When I saw that in theaters the first time, I couldn't look at kids the same way. I was like, these little shits are out to get me.
All right, that leads me to my final part of the show. It is my absolute favorite time. I love this every episode. It is the draft. So the way this works, it's going to be a little bit different. Usually we do a top 10, but because we have 4 people here, we're going to scale this one back to a top 5.
Okay. You cannot pick the same person twice. If your pick has been taken, you got to go with somebody else. Okay. And all we ask is, what are you picking and why are you putting it on your list tonight? This is our all-star killer list. So the way that we'll run this is, Chase, you will have first pick because that's how you set up on my screen. Matt, you're going next. Zach, and then I'm going fourth. We run this like a snake auction, which means 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I pick twice, and then we run it back. Okay. So starting things off for us, Chase, who is your number 1 pick?
Well, I'm glad I get first pick because Michael Myers. Michael Myers. I'm not too worried about the other ones getting taken, but Michael Myers out the gate.
What is Michael Myers bringing to your team?
He's
all these naked teenagers running around, drinking and having sex and doing drugs at parties.
He's the best at it. He's the best at what he does.
You're gonna die.
Of the big three, if you will, he's always been my favorite. I binge watched the Friday the 13th series not too long ago for the first time, and the thing that kept me coming back in those movies is the one thing that Jason Voorhees hates more than teens is windows. He breaks a window. Like, it became a game for me with every passing installment to watch and wait for him to break a window. And he does in every single movie, even
it's like
in
Tom
space.
Cruise and running.
Even in space, even in the remake, it's a move in the video game. So people know it's a thing. But Michael Myers, I mean, Halloween is what got me into all of it. And I think he is an unstoppable force.
Awesome. Matt, what is your pick for the first round?
It's got to be Freddy Krueger. Of the big three, he is actually my favorite. And I think first of all, the ability to inhabit dreams, even the dreams of Jason Voorhees, as we saw in Freddy vs. Jason, I think is such a potent and palpable like fear that people have. Mm-hmm. And it's also executed really cool. And he's also funny. So, yeah, of course, my number 1.
Awesome pick. Thank you for taking my number 1. But I figured somebody would. That is the bad part about being the host. I always go last in the first round just so I could wrap it around for the next second one. That usually my first pick is gone. Zach, who is your number 1 pick in the first round?
My first pick would be The Thing.
Okay.
Just because it can assimilate pretty much any living thing we can only assume. And that does some really terrible mental and emotional damage, I think.
Now, does it dream?
Does it dream? Oh.
But does it?
Why are you asking?
My number 1 pick, I'm gonna go Pennywise for my number 1. And there's a part of me that wants to go Tim Curry, but I'm gonna have to go new one, I think. For what the original did for me, I'm a huge Tim Curry fan. Rocky Horror is one of my absolute favorite movies, but what he did to the movie It was just amazing. But I think with this one being in theaters and not just a TV movie, we were able to do so much. Pennywise was just amazingly creepy, and I loved every part of it. So yeah, I'm going Pennywise, which leads me to my second pick here in the second round, and I'm gonna go with the man who killed nobody. I'm gonna go Jigsaw because it's all about that mental game. I got the scary shit with with Pennywise, feed on your fears. Now I'm just gonna hit you mentally with Jigsaw, and he's gonna make you kill yourself. So he's got better shit to do, like die early and yeah, all that shit. So I'm going Jigsaw. Zach, that leads me to you, your second pick in the draft.
I'm going to go a similar route than what you just did, Dash. I'm going to say Samara from The Ring.
Okay.
Because from the implications of the movie, just looking at her seems to drain your soul. So it's pretty powerful.
Very good.
Notice he said Samara, not Sadako.
Yeah.
Samara.
Maddie, who is your second pick here?
Mine is is going to be Pinhead.
Pinhead.
Yeah,
One that we
Hellraiser.
haven't really talked about tonight.
I love
but,
the look. I love what he's about. The dimensional manipulation, great. The bondage outfit, excellent.
Nice.
He's the eye candy.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of.
Yeah.
Consider all of them.
I'm sitting here going, well, yeah, definitely over Freddy. Okay, yeah. You got
I
some on
thought
your
you
face.
mean like out of the Cenobites.
Oh yeah.
Chase, who are you taking for your second pick here?
Second, I'm gonna go the Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Such a wonderful fucking movie.
Uh,
God, I love that movie.
I mean, they literally kill people basically by being Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
It's just applying Looney Tunes physics to real people is always going to lead to murder. So
Wrapping them up in cotton candy. Oh, just a great movie.
It's fantastic.
What is your third? Because you get to wrap it around
I'll
here.
bounce them back.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna go. Okay, I'm gonna go with Robert the Tire from the movie Rubber.
Okay.
Wow.
Robert the
How you like that
Tire.
one? Pretty. I was not afraid about anybody taking that pick.
You're really trying to make my graphics here like
I'm gonna
really
make you
difficult to
search for
find
that
on
one.
Google.
I'm gonna make you look for that one. I love a movie that establishes its rules up front. Like within the first 5 minutes, it's just like, here's what you're in for. Leave now if this isn't what you're about. And no movie does that better than Rubber. That starts with this monologue about this whole like, why does this happen in this movie? Just cause. Why does this happen in this movie? Just cause. And because of the just cause speech it gives at the beginning of the movie, no matter how ridiculous this film gets, no matter what happens, in the back of your mind you're gonna go, oh, that's right, just because. And it's such a well-established rule for this universe. And now you're watching a movie about a killer tire, and it's insane.
Honestly, I can say you did not take a pick of mine. Was not on my list.
He's got psychic powers. He's just a spare tire with psychic powers that kills people.
Matt, who is your third pick here in the Killer All-Star Draft?
So, I was thinking the same way. I was going through in the same direction. But a tire can't carry anyone. So I'm going with the Peterbilt truck from Maximum Overdrive.
Nice.
We could team up.
Yeah.
He needs tires.
On the truck.
I figured the tire could blend. It has the element of disguise.
Nice. Zach, who is your third pick here?
Now, are we allowed to pick like groups? Like it's
Well,
not like a group of named killers, but it's like a group like entity.
I would say yeah. Chase
Okay.
just chose every single killer clown from outer space.
Every single one.
Yeah.
So
that's-
I would say definitely.
I'm gonna pick Red and the Tethered from Us.
Okay.
Just because Us is like my favorite movie that
Right.
I've seen recently, but also they're very effective. Red lays out this plan for them and they carry it out. The only things that they fail at is that she ends up dying, but spoilers. But her plan is ultimately carried out. And so she's got that ability of like mass organization.
Nice. This is where we start to get a little dicey for me because I don't know who to pick. No, I do. I'm sorry. My number 3 pick here in the third round, I'm going Ghostface. But I think if I got to choose any of them, I'm probably going to go Billy Loomis. He was the original, and Skeet Ulrich is just awesome. He looks awesome too. I'm going Ghostface. This is where it kind of gets difficult for me because I'm wrapping around to the fourth. But I think I am going to go Sam from Trick or Treat as my fourth. I think a movie I didn't see coming whatsoever. And it was one of those like in the bin at Blockbuster or whatever. And I was like, what's this?
It changed my life for horror movies. Definitely. I love all the short stories that kind of come together, but Sam always is there. And it was just an awesome character. So yeah, I'm going Sam from Trick or Treat. Zach, what is your fourth pick here?
So this kind of goes along with Red and her ability for mass organization. I'm going to go with the Birds from the Birds.
The Birds, all of the Birds.
Duo right there. It's going to get those birds to mess shit up.
I love it. So you have, all of the birds, all of the clowns, all of the birds. Matt, who is your fourth pick in the fourth round here?
Well, I'm running out of people.
Exactly.
If we were,
Did you have the birds?
no. I guess if we're doing groups, can I choose the white people from Get Out?
Yeah.
I accept it.
As
not
a
my
white
show, but
person,
I
I would
accept
say yes, you can have the white people from Get Out.
I have to. I just the last track I made on the horror movie marathon is called "Fucking White People," and it's based.
Excellent.
Oh my God. That is probably one of my favorite things that's been said on this show. Can I choose the white people?
It's an evil force right there.
This is what I'm going to throw up the video from Chappelle's show. We the white
All-star
delegations.
killers.
Oh, wow. That was awesome. Chase, who is your fourth pick here?
I'm just gonna go with just one white dude, Stuntman Mike from Death Proof.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Old Kurt Russell. That
Yes, sir.
fucked me up the first time I saw it. I was not a horror guy yet, so I found that incredibly terrifying at the time. I definitely quit hanging my foot out the window of the car after I saw that movie. The whole thing, the tire to the face, the predatorial tendencies. I mean, he's just a creepy dude.
Yeah.
But he's also got that charm and that Kurt Russell charm and that line, it's only death proof if you're on my side. You're fucked at that point. So
Very good. And
Mike.
wrapping it around, you have Michael Myers, all of the killer clowns from outer space, Robert the Tire, and you have like the weirdest backup dancers ever for this.
Absolutely.
Michael Myers, killer clowns, Robert the Tire, and Stuntman Mike. Robert the Tire and Stuntman Mike sound like the greatest 80s rap group ever.
They should definitely.
Who rounds out your top five?
It's everybody else is like, I'm running out, and I'm like, I don't know how to narrow down my weirdos to a fifth one. Oh man, because I have one that I think just shuts it all down as far as all-star killers, but at the same time I feel like I got to represent for Chase and Shep and the 25 Slays. I feel like I got to have our Christmas killer in here. So
you're gonna go Santa from Futurama, aren't you?
No, I'm gonna go Santa Jaws.
Santa Jaws.
Santa Jaws from the film Santa Jaws. It's Jaws. with I believe Christmas ornament like shards for teeth. He has like a candy cane like unicorn horn thing. I mean, it's a whole thing. So I have to go with that. Because the other one that wouldn't have been fair was Death from Final Destination.
Yeah,
it's my sixth man.
Yeah, that's your sixth man. Matt, who finishes out your top five? You've got Freddy Krueger, Pinhead. You have a truck. You have all of the white guys. Who is your fifth? And women. Who is your fifth pick here?
Well, if we're doing demographics, I'm gonna go Rosemary's Baby and the elderly.
Okay.
Maybe I should have taken Death.
We're gonna get so much hate mail.
Seriously. Oh, I can't wait to just clip that one for Instagram. Can I choose the white people? Awesome. Zach, who is your final pick here? You have The Thing, Samara, you have Red in the Tether, The Birds, and
Who or what?
I'm gonna go with Xenomorph from Alien.
Okay.
Just the one from the first one. It's a perfect
Just the one.
organism, you know?
Yeah. Very, very good. I've got Pennywise, I've got Jigsaw, Ghostface, Sam from Trick or Treat. My fifth here, because I love the 80s so much. There were a handful of people I have on my list. I've got Hannibal Lecter here, Carrie, Rob De Niro from Cape Fear is on my list. Kind of playing on your show name, Watch No Evil. I actually had Kane from See No Evil on my list, which I loved as like kind of a resurgence of the slasher genre. I had Kevin Spacey in Seven, but I think I'm gonna go Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, just for two things: Phil Collins in the 80s. One of the greatest scenes in cinema history is just Patrick Bateman screwing somebody, watching himself in the mirror, and then just killing him right afterwards. Patrick Bateman is my fifth on the list here. Chase, big hearty FU for making me Google stuff, like going into separate pages, I'm sure. I love my graphics too. Definitely. Well, listen, guys, thank you all so much for being here. Chase, thank you for returning. You were a second time, 3 away from a 5-timer here. We'll see if we can get you back on the show again. Chase, let everybody know where we can find you on social media. Plug your stuff, plug your podcast. Let us know.
You can find us at the Chase and Shep Show on YouTube, Facebook.com/Chase and Shep, and of course, all things Chase and Shep at chaseandshep.com. And as I mentioned earlier, October this year is going to be lit from October 1st to October 31st. We've got a lot of stuff planned for Chase and Shep. And I already have 6 tracks off of the Horror Movie Marathon released as a halfway to Halloween EP that you can listen to now.
And where can they find that? They
can find that at chaseandshep.com/music, or our YouTube page, or the SoundCloud under The Chase Continues.
Awesome. Zach, Matt, where can we find your information, your social media for yourself and for your podcast?
Well, we're Watch No Evil, so you can find us on Instagram at Watch No Evil, Twitter at Watch No Evil 1. Apparently someone took at Watch No Evil. You can also find us on Facebook if you're into that. We're on YouTube, so you can just search for episodes on that. I think that's it.
And wherever podcasts are found.
Yeah, really.
Spotify, Apple, Google.
Awesome. Guys, thank you again so much for coming on the show tonight. It's been a blast talking about the horror genre and everything that goes with it, from killer clowns to trucks to white guys and girls. So thank you again. I've been Dash Michaels. This has been Shorts and Hoodies. I will see you next Thursday. Peace.
Cut the check.